All right, guys. Today we are going to be continuing the interview with the Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, who's going to be talking more about the relationship between United States and Russia. Let's jump in.
Guy wants to bring Russians and people of Russian culture back under his territorial integrity. I mean, it shows that he is not adequate.
So what are the terms under which Russia would cease hostilities? Like what are you asking for?
10 years ago, in February 2014, we were asking only for the deal between the president and the opposition.
Yes.
To have government of national unity and to hold early elections to be implemented. The deal was signed, and we were asking for the implementation of this deal. They were absolutely impatient and aggressive, and they were, of course, pushed, I have no slightest doubt, by the Americans, because if Victoria Nuland and the US ambassador agreed the composition of the government, why wait for 5 months to hold early elections? The next time we were in favor of something was when the Minsk agreements were signed.
Yes.
I was there. The negotiations lasted for 17 hours. And the deal was, well, Crimea was lost by then, by that time because of the referendum, and nobody, including my colleague John Kerry, meeting with us, nobody in the West was raising the issue of Crimea. Everybody was concentrated on Donbass. And the Minsk agreements provided for territorial integrity of Ukraine, minus Crimea, this was not even raised, and a special status for a very tiny part of Donbass, not for the entire Donbass, not for Novorossiya at all. Part of Donbass, under these Minsk agreements, endorsed by the Security Council, should have the right to speak Russian language, to teach Russian language, to study in Russian, to have local law enforcement like in the states of US, to be consulted when judges and prosecutors are appointed by the central authority, and to have some facilitated economic connections with neighboring regions of Russia. That's it. Something which President Macron promised to give to Corsica and still is considering how to do this. And when these agreements were sabotaged all along, first by Poroshenko and then by Zelensky, both of them, by the way, came to presidency running on the promise of peace, and both of them lied. So when these Minsk agreements were sabotaged to the extent that we saw the attempts to take this tiny part of Donbass by force, and we, as Putin explained, we have, at that time, we suggested these security arrangements to NATO and the United States, which was rejected. And when the Plan B was launched by Ukraine and its sponsors, trying to take this part of Donbass by force, it was then that we launched the special military operation. Had they implemented the Minsk agreements, Ukraine would be one piece minus Crimea. But even then, when Ukrainians, after we started the operation, suggested to negotiate, we agreed. There were several rounds in Belarus, and one later they moved to Istanbul. And in Istanbul, Ukrainian delegation put a paper on the table saying those are the principles on which we are ready to agree. And we accepted those principles.
The Minsk principles.
No, the Istanbul principles.
Yes.
That was April 22.
Right.
Which was no NATO, but security guarantees to Ukraine collectively provided with the participation of Russia. And these security guarantees would not cover Crimea or the east of Ukraine. It was their proposal. And it was initialed. And the head of the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul, who is now the chair of the Zelensky faction in the parliament, he recently, a few months ago, in an interview, he confirmed that this was the case. And on the basis of these principles, we were ready to draft a treaty. But then this gentleman who headed the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul, he said that Boris Johnson visited and told them to continue to fight. Then there was...
But Boris Johnson, on behalf of the
He said no, but you know, the guy who initialed the paper, he said it was Boris Johnson. Other people say it was Putin who ruined the deal because of the massacre in Bucha. But massacre in Bucha is something which they never mentioned anymore. Massacre in Bucha. I do, and we do. In a sense, they are on the defensive. Several times in the United Nations Security Council, sitting at the table with Antonio Guterres, 2 years ago and last year, last year and this year, the General Assembly, I raised the issue of Bucha and said, guys, it is strange that you are silent about Bucha because you were very vocal when BBC team found itself on a street where the bodies were located. And can we, I inquired, can we get the names of the persons whose bodies were broadcast by BBC? Total silence. I addressed Antonio Guterres personally in the presence of the Security Council members. He did not respond. Then at my press conference in New York, after the end of the General Assembly last September, I asked all the correspondents, guys, you are journalists. Maybe you're not an investigative journalist, but journalists normally are interested to get the truth. And Bucha thing, which was played all over the media outlets condemning Russia, is not of any interest to anyone. Politicians, UN officials, and now even journalists. I asked them, when I talked to them in September, please, as professional people, try to get the names of those whose bodies were shown in Bucha. No answer. Just like we don't...
You never will hear something like this. You will never hear about this. I didn't know that happened. That they were asking for some information, but they would never give it to him. Or to Russia, that is. Yeah, so... I'm not surprised that happened. Right? Since what kind of administration was running the country at the time. So... I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all.
Have any answer to the question, where is the results of medical analysis of Alexei Navalny, who died recently, but who was treated in Germany in the fall of 2020, when he felt bad on a plane over Russia. The plane landed. He was treated by the Russian doctors in Siberia. Then the Germans wanted to take him. We immediately allowed the plane to come. They took him. In less than 24 hours, he was in Germany. And then the Germans continued to say that we poisoned him. And we asked them, can you... And they announced that the analysis confirmed that he was poisoned. We asked for the test results to be given to us. They said, no, we give it to Organization on Chemical Weapons. We went to this organization, we are members. And we said, can you show to us, because this is our citizen. We are accused of having poisoned him. They said, the Germans told us not to give it to you. Because...
and this is where things get weird. This is where things get very weird, man. This is where things get very weird. Who poisoned that guy? That's the question. Who poisoned the guy?
They found nothing in the civilian hospital. And the announcement that he was poisoned was made after he was treated in a military hospital, Bundeswehr hospital. So it seems that this secret is not going.
So how did Navalny die?
Well, he died serving the term in Russia. But he, during, as far as it was reported, every now and then he felt not well, which was another reason why we continued to ask the Germans, can you show us the results which you found? Because we did not find what they found. And what they did to him, I don't know.
What the Germans did to him?
Yeah, because they don't explain to anybody, including us. Or maybe they explain to the Americans.
We have no idea.
Maybe this is credible, but they never told us.
They said it was the Russian government that deleted him. That's what they say. But I don't know if that's true or not. That's what we're trying to get here.
How they treated him, what they found, and what methods they were using.
How do you think he died?
I'm not a doctor, but for anybody to guess, even for the doctors to try to guess, they need to have information. And if the person was taken to Germany to be treated after he had been poisoned, the results of the tests cannot be secret. We still cannot get anything credible on the fate of Sergey Skripal and his daughter. The information is not provided to us. He is our citizen, she is our citizen, and we have all the rights under conventions which the UK is party to get information.
Why do you think, so many threads, but why do you think that Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the UK, would have stopped the peace process in Istanbul? On whose behalf was he doing that?
Well, I met with him a couple of times, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was motivated by some immediate desire or by some long-term strategy. He is not very predictable.
Okay.
He just.
Do you think he was?
When he say he's not very predictable.
He is not very predictable.
He's not very predictable. He's not very predictable. So you don't know, basically. I think it was more like he just wanted to be a politician. That's my opinion.
Okay. Do you think he was acting on behalf of the U.S. government, on behalf of the Biden administration? He was doing this independently? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know, and I wouldn't guess. The fact that
you don't know, yeah.
The Americans and the Brits are leading in this quote-unquote situation is obvious. Now it is becoming also clear that there is a fatigue in some capitals, and there are talks every now and then that the Americans would like to leave it with the Europeans and to concentrate on something more important. I wouldn't guess. We would be judging by specific steps. It's obvious, though, that Biden administration would like to leave legacy to the Trump administration as bad as they can.
yes.
And similar to what Obama did to Trump during his first term, when late December 2016, Obama expelled Russian diplomats just very late December, 120 persons with family members did it on purpose, demanded them on leave on the day when there was no direct flight from Washington. So they had to move to New York by buses with all their luggage, with children, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, Obama announced the arrest of pieces of diplomatic property of Russia. And we still never were able.
Yeah, playing for the cameras. Playing for the camera, that's what Obama did. He was such a sleazy politician, man. One of the worst, I would say. One of the worst.
Come and see what is the state of this Russian property. They never allowed us to come and see, though, under all convention. They just say that these pieces we don't consider as being covered by diplomatic immunity, which is a unilateral decision, never substantiated by any international court.
So you believe the Biden administration is doing something similar again to the incoming Trump administration?
Yeah, because that episode with the expulsion and the seizure of property certainly did not create the promising ground for beginning of our relations with the Trump administration. So I think they're doing the same.
But this time, President Trump was elected on the explicit promise to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. So, I mean, he said that in appearance after appearance. So given that, there is hope for a resolution, it sounds like. What are the terms to which you'd agree?
Well, the terms, I basically alluded to them when President Putin spoke in this ministry on the 14th of June. He once again reiterated that we were ready to negotiate on the basis of the principles which were agreed in Istanbul and rejected by Boris Johnson, according to the statement of the head of the Ukrainian delegation. The key principle is no non-block status of Ukraine.
What was that?
And we would be ready to
Non-block status? What is that?
be part of the group of countries who would provide collective security guarantees to
No
Ukraine.
NATO.
No NATO, absolutely. No military bases. No military exercises on the Ukrainian soil with participation of foreign troops. And this is something which he reiterated. But of course, he said it was April 2022. Now some time has passed. And the realities on the ground would have to be taken into account and accepted. The realities on the ground are not only the line of contact, but also the changes in the Russian constitution after referendum was held in Donetsk, Lugansk republics and Kherson and Zaporozhye regions.
Yes.
And they are now part of the Russian Federation according to the constitution, and this is a reality. And of course, we cannot tolerate a deal which would keep the legislation, which I quoted, prohibiting Russian language, Russian media, Russian culture, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because it is a violation of the obligations of Ukraine under the UN Charter, and somebody must be done about it. And the fact that the West, since this Russophobic legislative offensive started in 2017, since the West was totally silent, and it is silent until now, of course, we would have to pay attention to this in a very special way.
Would dropping sanctions against Russia be a condition?
I would say
Of course.
probably many people in Russia would like to make it a condition, but the more we live under sanctions, the more we understand that it is better to rely on yourself and to develop mechanisms, to develop platforms for cooperation.
I agree with that. If you manage a way to just survive without a lot without depending on other countries, and that's what I think the United States made that mistake with Middle East relying on oil. Why would you rely on oil in the Middle East when we have oil in our own soil? It makes no sense.
With normal countries who are not unfriendly to you, and don't mix economic interest and policies, and especially politics. And we learned a lot after the sanctions started. Sanctions started under Obama. They continued in a very big way under first term of Trump. And these sanctions under the Biden administration are absolutely unprecedented. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, but it also just drives
they would be never kill us, so they are making us stronger.
and driving Russia east. And so the vision that I think sane policymakers in Washington had 20 years ago is why not bring Russia into a Western bloc, sort of as a balance against the rising East? But it doesn't seem like that. Do you think that's still possible?
I don't think so. Recently, Putin was speaking at Valdai Club. Politologists and experts. He said we would never be back at the situation of early 2022. That's when he realized for himself, apparently, not only he, but he spoke publicly about this, that all attempts to be on equal terms with the West have failed.
Wow.
It started
Wow.
after the demise of the Soviet Union.
Wow.
There was euphoria. We are now part of the liberal world, the democratic world, end of history. But very soon it became clear to most of the Russians that in the 90s we were treated as, at best, as junior partner, maybe not even as a partner, but as a place where the West can organize things like it wants, striking deals with oligarchs, buying resources and assets, and then probably the Americans decided that Russia is in their pocket. Boris Yeltsin, Bill Clinton, buddies, laughing, joking. But even at the end of Yeltsin's term, he started to contemplate that this was not something she wanted for Russia. And I think this was very obvious when he appointed Putin prime minister, and then left earlier and blessed Putin as his successor for the elections which were coming and which Putin won. But when Putin became president, he was very much open to cooperation with the West. And he mentions about this quite regularly when he speaks with interviewers or at some international events. I was present when he met with George Bush Jr., with Obama. Well, after the meeting of NATO in Bucharest, which was followed by NATO-Russia summit meeting in 2008, when they announced that Georgia and Ukraine will be in NATO, and then they tried to sell it to. We asked why.
Yeah, and I think this is where everything just started going really went south. When Ukraine wanted to just join NATO, and I understand why, because that means that NATO, again, will be closer to the border of Georgia, you know, and also Ukraine was part of Russia, so that I understand. I understand. I understand. I understand. It's
Why?
not comfortable.
There was lunch, and Putin asked, what was the reason for this?
Good question.
And they said, this is something which is not obligatory. How come? Well, to start the process of joining NATO, you need a formal invitation. And this is a slogan. Ukraine and Georgia will be in NATO.
Wow.
But this slogan, became obsession for some people in Tbilisi first, when Saakashvili lost his senses and started the war against his own people
Damn.
under the protection of OSCE mission with the Russian peacekeepers on the ground.
Wow.
And the fact that he launched this was confirmed by the European Union investigation, which they launched and which concluded that he gave the order to start. And for Ukrainians, it took a bit longer. And they were cultivating this pro-Western mood. Well, pro-Western is not bad, basically. Pro-Eastern is also not bad. What is bad is that you tell people either or. Either you go with me or you're my enemy. What happened before the coup in Ukraine? In 2013,
I remember that.
the president of Ukraine was
I remember that. I was in Milwaukee doing my master's degree in music performance. I remember when that happened, watching the videos on YouTube. It was crazy.
Mr. Yanukovych, negotiated with the European Union some association agreement which would nullify tariffs on most of the Ukrainian goods to the European Union and the other way around. And at some point, when he was meeting with Russian counterparts, we told him, you have already, Ukraine was part of the free trade area of the Commonwealth of Independent States, no tariffs for everybody. And we, Russia, negotiated agreement with World Trade Organization for some 15, 17 years, mostly because we bargained with European Union and we achieved some protection for many of our sectors, agriculture, some others. And we explained to the Ukrainians that if you go zero in your trade with European Union, we would have to protect our customs border with you, with Ukraine. Otherwise, the zero tariff European goods would flood and would be hurting our industries, which we tried to protect and agreed for some protection. Then we suggested to the European Union, guys, Ukraine is our common neighbor. You want to have better trade with Ukraine. We want the same. Ukraine want to have markets both in Europe and in Russia. Why don't we sit three of us and discuss it like grown-ups? The head of the European Commission was the Portuguese, Barroso was his name. And he responded, it's none of your business what we do with Ukraine.
Damn.
We, for example, the
Damn. Wow, damn, bro. Yo, that's Portugal saying stuff like that. I don't know about what y'all. Y'all need to chill over there in Portugal, man. Y'all need to chill in Portugal. You guys have different problems over there, man.
European Union, we don't ask you to discuss with us your trade with China. Absolutely arrogant answer. And then the president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, he convened his experts, and the experts said, yes, it would be not very good if we have opened the border with European Union, but the customs border with Russia would be closed, and they would be checking, what is coming so that the Russian market is not affected.
Very
And he
volatile in that area.
announced in November 2013 that he cannot sign the deal immediately, and he asked the European Union to postpone it for next year, until next year. That was the trigger for Maidan, which was immediately
Yes.
thrown up and ended by the coup. My point is that this either or, actually the first coup took place in 2004, when after second round of elections, the same Mr. Yanukovych won presidency, the West raised hell, and put pressure on the Constitutional Court of Ukraine to rule that there must be a third round.
Wow.
And the Constitution of Ukraine says 2 rounds. And the Constitutional Court, under the pressure of the West, violated the Constitution for the first time then. And pro-Western...
Yeah, at that point, there's no more Ukraine. That's it. That's what happened. When you violate your own constitution, that means that you have what they call it, a constitutional crisis. That means that by not abiding by your own constitution, that means that you dissolve what is holding the entire thing together, right? So at that point, you dismantle the entire country.
Candidate was chosen. At that time, when all this was taking place and boiling, the European leaders were publicly saying Ukrainian people must decide, are they with us or with Russia?
Wow.
This either or is still very much.
But it is the way that big countries behave. I mean, there are certain orbits, and now it's BRICS versus NATO, US versus China. And it sounds like you're saying the Russian-Chinese alliance is permanent.
Well, we are neighbors.
Of course.
And geography is very important. And
But you're also neighbors with Western Europe. You're part of it, in effect.
Well, through Ukraine. And the Western Europe wants to come to our borders. And there were plans that, were discussed almost openly to put British naval bases on the Sea of
Yes.
Azov. Crimea was eyed, dreaming about creating NATO base in Crimea, and so on and so forth. We have been very friendly with Finland, for example. Overnight, the Finns came back to early years of preparation for World War II, when they were best allies of Hitler, and all this neutrality, all this friendship, going to sauna together, playing hockey together, all this disappeared overnight.
Wow.
So maybe this was deep in their hearts, and the neutrality was burdening them, and niceties were burdening for them. I don't know.
That's totally possible. Can you negotiate with Zelensky? You've pointed out that he has exceeded his term. He's not, democratically elected president of Ukraine anymore. So do you consider him a suitable partner for negotiations?
Putin addressed this issue as well, many times. In September 2022, during the first year of the special operation, Zelensky, in his conviction that he would be dictating the terms of the situation also to the West, he signed a decree prohibiting any negotiations with Putin's government.
Damn.
And when during public events, after that episode, Putin is asked why Russia is not ready for negotiations, he said, don't turn it upside down. We are ready for negotiations, provided it will be based on the balance of interest tomorrow. But Zelensky signed this decree prohibiting negotiations. And for starters, why don't you tell him to cancel it publicly? This will be a signal that he wants negotiations. Yeah. Instead, Zelensky invented his peace formula. Later it was additioned by victory plan, and they keep saying, we know what they say when they meet with European Union ambassadors and
Yeah.
in other formats. They say, no deal unless the deal is on our terms. And I mentioned to you they are planning now the second summit on the basis of this peace formula, and they don't shy away from saying we will invite Russia to put in front of it the deal which we agreed already with the West. And when our Western colleagues sometimes say nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, in effect, this implies that anything about Russia without Russia, because they discuss what kind of conditions we must accept. By the way, recently they already violate tacitly the concept nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. There are passes, there are messages. They know our position. We are not playing double game. What Putin announced is the goal of our operation. It's fair. It's fully in line with the United Nations Charter. First of all, the rights, language rights, minority rights, national minority rights, religious rights, and it's fully in line with OSCE principle. There is an organization for security and cooperation in Europe which is still alive. And the summit of this organization, well, several summits of this organization clearly stated that security must be indivisible, that nobody should expand his security at the expense of security of others, and that, most important, no organization in Euro-Atlantic space shall claim dominance. This was, last time it was confirmed by OSCE 2010.
Damn, what a memory.
And NATO was doing exactly the opposite.
Yes.
So we have legitimacy, in our position. No NATO on our doorsteps because OSCE, agreed that this should not be the case if it hurts us. And please restore the rights of Russians.
Very interesting. Wow, man, the guy has a very good memory. He remembers a lot of dates. A very good politician. Yeah. I don't know, folks. I don't know. Some of you guys speak Russian. You're probably not gonna understand what I'm saying in English, right? But I do like politics. I do love politics. I try my best to educate myself regarding these situations. It seems like based on a lot of the discovery, learning that have done in the last couple of years, the surface level on a lot of these issues is not even 1% of what's really going on. We have to see. Let me know what you guys see in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.